The taxi smelled of stale cigarette smoke and cheap air freshener, a nauseating combination that Gabriel had learned to tolerate during his years of undercover work. The driver, a heavy-set man with a gold tooth and a perpetual scowl, had not spoken a word since Gabriel gave him the address of the old lighthouse on the north coast. Through the rain-streaked window, Gabriel watched the city lights recede into the distance, replaced by the dark, jagged silhouette of cliffs and the endless gray expanse of the ocean. His eyes kept darting to the rear-view mirror, where the black SUV had been following them since the storm drain. It maintained a steady distance, never closing in, never falling back, like a predator toying with its prey. Gabriel's hand instinctively moved to his pocket, where he had stashed the scrap of paper with the 10 names his mother had supposedly left him, but that was from the original timeline, the one he had rewritten in his mind. In this reality, he had not yet found her, and the names were still a phantom. He forced himself to focus on the present. The professor had assets everywhere, but the SUV was too obvious, too visible. Either the professor wanted him to know he was being followed, or there was a third party involved, someone who had not yet revealed their hand. The taxi crested a hill, and the lighthouse came into view, a crumbling white tower perched on the edge of a rocky promontory, its beacon long extinguished. Gabriel paid the driver, stepped out into the biting wind, and watched the taxi disappear into the mist. The SUV had stopped a quarter-mile back, its headlights off, waiting. Gabriel turned toward the lighthouse and began to walk. The door of the lighthouse was rusted, but not locked, a detail that made Gabriel's skin prickle with unease. He pushed it open, and the hinges groaned like a wounded animal. Inside, the air was thick with salt and decay, and the spiral staircase that rose toward the top was littered with broken glass and bird droppings. Gabriel climbed slowly, his footsteps echoing in the hollow space, each turn of the staircase revealing more of the building's decay. At the top, in the former lantern room, a figure stood with her back to him, wrapped in a dark coat, her silhouette framed against the stormy sky. She turned, and Gabriel felt his breath catch in his throat. It was her, his mother, Elena, whose death certificate he had signed 20 years ago, whose funeral he had wept through. She looked older, her face etched with lines that spoke of years of hiding, but her eyes were the same, sharp and unwavering. "You came," she said, her voice steady but tinged with something that might have been relief or might have been sorrow. "You didn't think you would." Gabriel took a step forward, his mind racing with 1,000 questions, but she raised a hand to stop him. "Before you ask anything, you need to understand something. The professor was telling you the truth about one thing. Your father encoded the list in your DNA, but he lied about the rest. He does not want to destroy the committee. He wants to replace it. And the only way to stop him is to decode your genetic code before his extraction team finds you. I have a device that can read the sequence, but it requires a fresh blood sample and 12 hours of uninterrupted processing. We do not have 12 hours. They are already here." Gabriel felt the floor shift beneath him, not physically, but emotionally. His mother, whom he had mourned for 2 decades, was alive, and her first words to him were a death sentence. He forced himself to push past the shock and focus on the practical. Who are they? The SUV outside? The professor's men? Elena shook her head, her expression grim. The SUV is a decoy, sent by the professor to keep you moving, to make you feel hunted. The real threat is already inside this building. The professor has a mole in every resistance network, and he knew you would come here because he knows that I am still alive. He has been using you as bait to draw me out of hiding. The moment you arrived at the lighthouse, you confirmed my location to his satellites. Gabriel's blood ran cold. He had been so focused on escaping the prison and following the breadcrumbs to his mother that he had not stopped to consider that the breadcrumbs themselves might have been planted. "Then why did you tell me to come here?" he asked, his voice sharper than he intended. Elena's eyes softened, and for the first time, he saw a flicker of the mother he remembered. "Because I have something you need, Gabriel. Not just the device, but the truth about why your father really died. He did not encode the list in your DNA to protect it. He encoded it because he knew he would not survive to give it to you himself. He trusted you to carry the burden, but he never told you that the code is also a weapon, a bioweapon designed to wipe out the committee's entire digital infrastructure. If activated, it would destroy their network, but it would also trigger a global cascade that could collapse banking systems, communication grids, and military databases. Your father was not trying to expose the committee. He was trying to destroy it, regardless of the collateral damage." Gabriel staggered backward, his mind reeling from the weight of this revelation. His father, the man he had idolized as a crusader for truth, had been willing to sacrifice millions of innocent lives to achieve his revenge. The horror of it settled into his bones like frost, and he looked at his mother with new eyes. "And you?" he asked. "What were you in all of this?" Elena turned away, her gaze fixed on the distant ocean. "I was the one who tried to stop him. I was the one who told the committee that he was planning the attack. I did not kill him, Gabriel. I tried to save him from himself. But the committee did not want to save him. They wanted to silence him. They offered me a deal. Help them capture him, and they would spare his life. I accepted, but they lied. They killed him anyway, and they let me live with the guilt. I have been running ever since, trying to find a way to honor his memory without continuing his war." Gabriel felt a cold fury rising in his chest. His father had been a collaborator, a traitor who had traded his father's life for her own survival. But even as the anger surged, a more chilling thought took hold. If she had betrayed his father, what was stopping her from betraying him? He took a step back, his hand moving to the rusted railing of the lighthouse, his mind already calculating his next move. Before Elena could speak again, a loud crash echoed from the base of the lighthouse, followed by the sound of boots on the spiral staircase. Elena's face drained of color, and she grabbed Gabriel's arm with a grip that was surprisingly strong. "They are here. The extraction team. They will not take you alive, Gabriel. You have to run." She shoved a small metal device into his palm, the DNA reader, and pointed toward a trap door in the floor that Gabriel had not noticed. "There is a tunnel beneath the lighthouse that leads to the cliffs. It is narrow and dangerous, but it will take you to a cove where I have a boat hidden. Go now, and do not look back." Gabriel hesitated, his eyes searching her face for any sign of deception. "What about you?" he asked. Elena smiled, a sad, resigned smile that reminded him of his father's final photograph. "I have been running for 20 years, Gabriel. I am tired. Besides, they are not here for me. They are here for the code you carry. If I stay, I can buy you the time you need."
Gabriel wanted to argue, wanted to drag him with him, but the sound of the boots was getting closer, and the urgency in her eyes was undeniable. He dropped the trapdoor, which opened into a black abyss, and began his descent into the darkness below. Behind him, he heard his mother's voice, raised in defiance, and then the crack of a gunshot. He froze, his heart pounding, but the shot was followed by silence, and he knew that he could not go back. He had to keep moving.
The tunnel was a claustrophobic nightmare, barely wide enough for Gabriel's shoulders, with jagged rocks that tore at his jumpsuit and scraped his skin. The air was cold and damp, and the sound of his own breathing was amplified into a deafening roar in the confined space. He crawled for what felt like hours, his progress measured in inches, until he saw a faint glimmer of light ahead. He pushed himself forward, scraping his hands raw, and emerged onto a narrow ledge overlooking a small, secluded cove. Below, hidden beneath a tarpaulin, was a battered motorboat. Gabriel scrambled down the rocks, his body screaming with exhaustion, and untied the boat. The engine sputtered to life on the third try, and he steered it out into the open water, away from the lighthouse, away from the gunshot that still echoed in his mind. As the cove disappeared into the mist, Gabriel looked down at the device his mother had given him. It was a small, portable sequencer, the kind used in advanced genetic labs, and it had a single button. He pressed it, and a screen lit up with a message. Sample required. Estimated processing time, 12 hours. Warning, this device is tracked. Location will be broadcast immediately upon activation. His mother had given him a tracker, not a rescue. She had used him to draw out the professor's men, and now she was probably already dead or captured. The betrayal cut deeper than any physical wound, but Gabriel forced himself to think. If the device was tracked, he had to use it to his advantage. He could not decode his own DNA without a lab, but he could use the tracker as a decoy, a way to mislead the professor while he found another path. Gabriel steered the boat toward a small fishing village he remembered from his father's old photographs, a place where no one asked questions and everyone minded their own business. He docked the boat at a rickety pier, abandoned the engine, and melted into the narrow cobblestone streets. The village was quiet, almost sleepy, with only a few old men sitting on porches, smoking pipes and watching the sea. Gabriel found a small inn, paid with the last of his hidden emergency cash, and locked himself in a room with a cracked window and a sagging bed. He sat on the floor, his back against the wall, and examined the device again. The tracker was accurate, which meant the professor's men would be converging on his current location within hours. But he had an idea, a desperate gamble that might buy him the time he needed. He opened the device's casing, exposing a tangle of wires, and began to modify it, rerouting the signal, creating a feedback loop that would cause the tracker to broadcast a shifting false location. It was a crude fix, something he had learned during his years covering tech infiltrations, but it would give him maybe 6 hours of confusion before the professor's analysts caught on. He had 6 hours to find a real lab, a real geneticist, someone who could decode his DNA without alerting the committee. His mind turned to a name he had not spoken in years, Dr. Elena Reyes, a biochemist who had worked with his father on a classified project in the 1990s. She was now a professor at a small university in the southern province. It was a long shot, but it was the only lead he had. Gabriel left the inn before dawn, wearing a stolen jacket and a cap that shadowed his face. He hitchhiked south, avoiding main roads, moving through backcountry trails and small towns where the locals were too busy with their own lives to notice a stranger. By midday, he reached the university campus, a sprawling complex of whitewashed buildings nestled in a valley. He found Dr. Reyes's office in the biology department, but the door was locked and a sign read, "On leave." Gabriel's heart sank, but he noticed a graduate student sitting in the hallway, scrolling through her phone. He approached her, his voice low and urgent. "I need to speak with Dr. Reyes. It is a matter of life and death." The student looked up, her eyes widening at his bruised face and tattered clothes. "She is not here. She left 2 weeks ago, said she had to attend a conference, but she did not tell anyone where." Gabriel felt the last of his hope crumble. Dr. Reyes was gone, and the device was still tracking him. But the student, perhaps sensing his desperation, added, "She did leave a box of old files with me, though. Said they were from a project she worked on in the 90s. I was supposed to archive them. Could they be useful?" Gabriel grabbed her arm, perhaps too tightly, and said, "Show me." The box was filled with yellowed folders, handwritten notes, and old photographs. Gabriel sifted through them with trembling hands, searching for anything that might relate to his father or the genetic code. He found a photograph of his father, younger and smiling, standing next to Dr. Reyes in a laboratory. On the back, in his father's handwriting, was a date and a cryptic phrase. "The key is not in the blood, but in the pattern." Gabriel stared at the words, trying to decipher their meaning. If the key was not in the blood, then where was it? He turned the photograph over and noticed a faint watermark, a sequence of numbers that looked like coordinates. He typed them into his phone, and the map showed a location in the middle of the desert, hundreds of kilometers away. His father had not hidden the key in his DNA. He had hidden a map to the key, and the DNA was merely a lock that required a specific genetic sequence to open the final archive. The professor's extraction team would have been chasing a ghost if they had tried to decode Gabriel's blood, because the real treasure was buried in the sand. But before he could celebrate, the graduate student gasped and pointed toward the window. A black helicopter was descending on the campus lawn, and armed men in tactical gear were jumping out, their weapons trained on the building. The professor had found him, not through the tracker, but through the student's phone that had been bugged by the committee years ago. Gabriel had been set up again, and the clock had just run out. Gabriel did not have time to think. He only had time to move. He grabbed the box of files, shoved the photograph into his pocket, and burst through the back door of the office, running through the empty corridors of the biology building. He heard the shouts of the tactical team behind him, the pounding of boots on linoleum, and the sharp crack of a stun grenade that sent a shockwave through the air. He crashed through a fire exit, sprinted across the campus quad, and dove into a drainage ditch that ran along the perimeter fence. Bullets whizzed past his head, splashing mud into his eyes, but he kept moving, crawling through the muck until he reached a chain-link fence and scrambled over it, the wires tearing at his flesh. He landed on a dirt road and ran toward a tree line, his lungs burning, his vision blurring with exhaustion and adrenaline. He did not look back. He could not afford to. When he finally collapsed in a thicket of pines, gasping for breath, he pulled out the photograph and stared at the coordinates. The desert. He had to get to the desert, but he had no money, no transport, and a small army of operatives hunting him. He looked at the device his mother had given him, the tracker that had almost killed him, and made a decision. He threw it into a nearby stream, watching it sink into the murky water, severing the professor's ability to follow him through that thread. But as he watched the ripples fade, he realized that his mother had given him something else, something she had not intended, the knowledge that his father had outsmarted them all. The code was not in his blood. The code was a trap,
and the professor had fallen for it. Now Gabriel had to find the real treasure before the professor realized his mistake. He stood up, his body aching, and began walking south toward the coordinates, toward the unknown, toward the truth that might finally set him free or bury him forever. The sun was setting behind the mountains, casting long, dark shadows across the landscape, and Gabriel knew that this was the longest night of his life and the most dangerous.